very shortly. Everyone has arrived in the radio hall. So, Nirosh.
வணக்கம். மார்கானியின் புதிய இன்றைய அமைச்சரவை குழு இன்று தீர்மானிக்கப்பட போகிறது. ஆரம்பத்திலேயும் கடந்த 2 மாதங்களுக்கு முதல்ல தீர்மானிக்கப்பட்டிருந்தாலும், இப்ப இந்த எலக்ஷனுக்கு பிறகு இந்த புதிய ஒரு அமைச்சரவை குழுவும் தீர்மானிக்கப்பட போகிறது. மார்கானியை பற்றி சொல்லப்போனால், அவரது 2வது அமைச்சரவையாகும் இந்த குழு இன்றைய நாள் தீர்மானிக்கப்பட போகிறது என்று தான் சொல்ல வேணும். அவர் தேர்தலில் வெற்றி பெற்ற பிறகும் அமைக்கப்படும் முதன்மையான அமைச்சரவையும் இதாகத்தான் இருக்கப் போகிறது. அதுவும் சிறியதும் தீவிரமான கவனத்துடனும் செயல்படக்கூடியதாகவும் இயங்கும் என்று சொல்லப்படுகிறது. பொறுத்திருந்து பார்க்கலாம். இன்னும் சற்று நேரத்தில் ஒவ்வொருவரும் அவர்களின் பதவி பிரமாணங்களை எடுத்துக்கொள்ளப் போகிறார்கள். உங்களுக்காக நாங்கள் பிஹைமி சார்பாக தர காத்திருக்கிறோம். ஈஷனால்.
Yeah, so as we all know, the whole country, this has been a very important election, and the liberals have taken over. So the important or the surprising thing is that the liberals have taken over the cabinet or the parliament with a minority vote. So,
Yes.
Nirosh, as a personal, private question, like, what do you think about liberals, coming back into power?
Yeah, so my point is like mainly for the immigrants, the immigrants, they're thinking whether if that comes as a good sign for them. So those things also there, but for Markani it'll be mainly a big challenge, because all the parties will be coming there as the whole cabinet for him. So it's not yet finalized. I mean, we can't even say who and who got elected right now as a cabinet team. So whatever it comes, it will be
As
same,
far
yeah.
as I know, I think the cabinet is going to be the same, but
Yeah.
a little reshuffling
Changes.
of the titles are
Yes.
going to happen, and we will be able to witness that in a few minutes.
Hmm.
Um, on my point of view, I just feel that Canada was looking for a change.
Yes.
And I honestly thought that the Conservatives were going to come into
Come
power.
into, yes, but all of a sudden it could change, right?
I know. I mean, they won in a minority vote, but the issue is like until the last moment, it was a tight
Yes.
Yes. election. Yes. But anyhow, well, this is what Canada has voted for. Any update on the ministry?
ஆமா. இப்ப தமிழ்ல நாங்க சொல்லப்போனா, இந்த அமைச்சரவையில் வந்து 30 பேர்ல பாதியானவர்கள் இருக்கிறார்கள். அதாவது புதியவர்களாகத்தான் இருக்கப் போகிறார்கள் என்று தகவல்கள் வெளியாகியிருக்கிறது. அந்த வகையில சிபிசியின் தகவலின்படி ஷான் ஃப்ரேசர் நிதித்துறை அமைச்சராக நியமிக்கப்படுகிறார் என்று தகவல் வெளியாகியிருக்கிறது. அதே வேளையில் புதிய தேர்ந்தெடுக்கப்பட்ட டிம் ஹாட்சன் இயற்கை வளங்கள் மற்றும் ஆற்றல் அமைச்சராகவும் இருப்பார் என்றும் தகவல் வந்திருக்கிறது. பொறுத்திருந்து பார்க்கலாம். உங்களுக்காகவும் நாங்கள் அந்த தகவல்களை தர காத்திருக்கிறோம். பிஹைமியோட நேரலையாக நீங்கள் இணைந்திருக்கிறீங்க. இன்னும் பல விடயங்களை உங்களுக்கு நாங்கள் தருவோம்.
Well, yeah, Carney is expected to go ahead with this change because it would allow for a core group of seniors and ministers, namely those responsible for major departments, to meet frequently and deal with central government issues. So this is according to, government information. So what can we see right now? So we are taking the footage from CTV as they are going live, and the hall is filling up, and we can shortly see the swearing
So
in.
soon PM Carney unveils his cabinet. That's what the breaking news comes. So அதே நேரத்தில் முந்தைய அமைச்சரவையில் 23 அமைச்சர்கள் இருந்தார்கள் என்றும் 11 பெண்கள் மற்றும் 13 ஆண்களும் இருந்தனர் என்பதும் ஒரு முக்கியமான குறிப்பிடத்தக்க விஷயம். அதே நேரத்தில் வந்து ஜஸ்டின் ட்ரூடோவின் கடைசி அமைச்சரவையில் 39 பேர் இருந்தார்கள் என்பதும் குறிப்பிடத்தக்க ஒரு விடயம். பொறுத்திருந்து நாங்கள் பார்க்கலாம். இதே நேரத்தில் வந்து அவரது புதிய அமைச்சரவையில் 2 அடுக்குகளில் வந்து இந்த கேபினெட் அமைய போகிறது என்று கூறப்படுகிறது. முக்கியமாக முதன்மை அமைச்சர்கள் அடங்கிய முக்கிய குழு, அதே நேரத்தில் 2ஆம் நிலை இளைய அமைச்சர்கள் குழுவும் இவர்கள் கூறிய இந்த பணியாளர் குழுக்களுடன் செயல்படுவார்கள் என்றும் சொல்லப்படுகிறது. இந்த புதிய அமைச்சரவை எதுவும் அமைச்சகம் எதுவும் உருவாக்கப்படாது என்றும் கூறப்படுகிறது. எல்லா விஷயத்தையும் உங்களுக்காக நாங்கள் இப்போ தருவோம். யாரு மார்க் கார்னி அவர் திரைக்கு வரட்டும். உங்களுக்கான தகவல் அவரே உங்களுக்காக தருவார்.
So talking about the previous ministry, I have a list of people who were already there, but within a few minutes, the titles might change. So we have the Honorable Dominic LeBlanc, who was the Minister of International Trade and Governmental Affairs. And we have Melanie Joly, who was the Minister of Foreign Affairs and International Development. and also Francois Philippe, who was the Minister of Finance. And I must say that this ministry is a very diverse. It's not just Canadians. We have people who are from the Indian origin, Sri Lankan, and so many other places as well. So we have Gary Anand Sangri also, who was the Minister of Justice, and Chrystia Freeland, the Minister of Transport and Internal Trade. So like that, in a few minutes, we'll be able to see whether these ministers will be getting their same title or a different one.
Yes.
Will be very, very thin, and I think they'll be in a position to really push to go to the polls again. But I don't think that's like a 6-month project. I think that's a 18-month project, and so giving them a little rope and seeing whether they they do something constructive with it or whether they hang themselves is probably a good strategy. I'll also be very interested to see what they do with the NDP. To the question you asked, Kathleen. There's some advantages in giving party status to the NDP in terms of committee structure, in terms of having some discipline in the NDP caucus, which I think is quite fractured at the moment. There's a benefit to the Carney Liberals.
சிறிதாக அரங்கை அப்படியே ஃபீல் பண்ணிட்டு இருக்காங்க. Yeah, I'm saying like the people are coming into the.
Yes, they were supposed to start at 10:30, but still the crowd hasn't filled in yet.
Maintaining that for a longer period of time has its advantages too. So I guess it depends whether you're focused on making life easier for yourself in the House of Commons and in committees, or whether you're wanting to make life easier for yourself potentially in the next federal election. Because I think it takes you in two different directions depending on which one you're focused on.
You are looking live inside Rideau Hall, where any moment now the swearing-in ceremony for Prime Minister Mark Carney's new cabinet will get underway. His wife, Diana Carney, there greeting the former Governors General and former Prime Minister Jean Chrétien, some other members of the Prime Minister's family. We await the entrance of the new cabinet ministers, new secretaries of state, and the Prime Minister himself. Scott, we're sort of all talking about what Parliament might look like, what the messaging around cabinet is. I think it all speaks to the question that I posed to Nick a little bit earlier, which is like, what kind of political capital at this moment in time do you think the Prime Minister has, and how do you anticipate he spends it?
I think he will spend capital. I don't think that he is an incrementalist. I don't think that he is going to husband capital and think about how do I make certain I avoid an unfavorable vote in the House of Commons. I don't think he's scared of his own shadow. To me, I've said this before, I keep coming back to this thing that Carney said early in the leadership campaign where he said,
இப்போ இதாவது புதிய அமைச்சரவையை பற்றி பார்த்தால் முக்கியமாக அமெரிக்காவின் வரி விதிப்புகளுக்கு எதிரான போராட்டம் மற்றும் கனடா பொருளாதார வளர்ச்சிக்காக பணியாற்றும் என்றும் இந்த புதிய கேபினெட்டில் எதிர்பார்க்கப்படுகிறது என்று சொல்லப்படுகிறது. அமைச்சர்கள் பதவியேற்கும் இந்த விழாவும் இன்னும் சற்று நேரத்தில் உங்களுக்காக நாங்களும் நேரடியாக தரதை காத்திருக்கிறோம். பொறுத்திருந்து நாங்கள் பார்க்கலாம். இப்பொழுதுதான் ஒவ்வொருத்தராக வந்து அப்படியே அரங்கை அப்படியே சூழ்ந்து இருக்கிறாங்க. இன்னும் சற்று நேரத்தில் அன்வீல் பண்ணப்படும் யார் கேபினெட்டில் இந்த தேர்ந்தெடுக்கப்பட்டிருக்கிறாங்கன்னு சொல்லி.
See him move rapidly. I think he's going to be less anxious about what happens in the House of Commons and how votes may fall. We won't be reckless, but I think he's going to feel that he pretty much has a working majority, and I think he's going to move. And I think some of these choices suggest that. This is not a timid cabinet where you're afraid. I mean, he's put a lot of newcomers into substantial new portfolios. And as Nick said, sometimes rookies make mistakes. He doesn't appear to be all that anxious about it. It seems to me that this guy is going to put it to the mat.
I think, Kathleen, that as we wait for the ceremony to begin and cabinet members to come in, like what Scott says is right, that's certainly like that is sort of what Mark Carney, what the Prime Minister has conveyed thus far. I keep thinking though, like, about the machinery of government, which sounds lame, but like about the reality of doing big things, because I get that we're in a crisis, but we've stood in our own way on multiple occasions in the past, and I include within that like the way that government and cabinet has worked under previous governments. So I wonder like how closely you'll be watching, like how, not just how he spends the capital, but if like there's a return on that investment.
Yeah, and it is really geeky, but I will be looking at how he actually structures cabinet committees, and how the Carney government wants to look at any kind of consultation, especially with stakeholders, whether it's energy or elsewhere, that require regulation, and how he will do that. Remember, in 2015, 9.5 years ago, when Trudeau was sworn in and he brought in his new government, there were wide swath changes, not only to how cabinet committees were structured, but how he sent out mandate letters that required all of his ministers to actively consult with different stakeholders that the Conservatives under Stephen Harper completely rejected. So Trudeau asked his ministers, you must speak to labor, you must speak to women's groups, you must speak to, commerce, corporate world, speak to these people in the process of doing these decisions. But what I think that we'll see in Carney is really a prioritization more on execution than process, because we have, or there's a feeling at least out there that there's been a lot of talking, but not a lot of action, not a lot of building, as they say. And I think that even if we reflect on what's happened in the States since Donald Trump's inauguration, as well, many in the US haven't been happy with all the decisions Mr. Trump has taken. They do get a sense that there's action in Washington and that he has moved quickly on various things. And I think that there is a desire.
Something, Neeraj, that I want to get your commentary also on this.
Yeah.
Now, as we heard also, people are judging whether, Mark Carney will actually take action on whatever he's promising, because, the Liberal government is not popular for that sort of thing. So that's why they wanted change in the first place.
Yes.
But do you think that Mark Carney will be able to do a change this time in Canada?
Up to right. That's what I told. Like that is their challenge. If because everyone trusted him and voted, and he's the prime minister. So
Yeah.
he should anyways do, and he might have good plans with the new cabinet as well. So
Yeah, that's right.
let's wait for the hope. Yeah,
Yeah.
hope he'll do definitely, but he might have some plan, because it's a 5 years plan, right?
Yes.
So that then it should be something, because he'll take it as a good. He'll put more effort on this, and it will be in a good thing. So let's wait for it.
And especially, with the comments made by Donald Trump, and recently he met the US president also, and still he is adamant on making Canada the 51st state.
Yeah.
But thankfully, PM Carney was able to give some remarks in a way that to say that, no, Canada is not for sale. So, but still there are so many controversies saying that, he didn't do his best.
Yeah.
And the fact that, Trump...
You mean Carney?
Yes.
Okay.
When they had their meeting in US.
So kind of for Mark Carney, it's a new beginning from today.
Probably.
Yeah.
Yeah. The question
So since
is,
he's a good economist, so it should come in a good way. So there'll be something coming good to the nation.
Economist to politician, that's the question.
Yeah, that's the question. Yeah, true.
Canada, I hope y'all did it right this time.
We'll see how that works. I think it's encouraging that it appears that we're going to have some of the better players in terms of working with others at the provincial level, maintaining roles in that area, whether it's Don LeBlanc or Chrystia Freeland. And some of the people who've been impediments to that, either out of cabinet altogether, like Wilkinson, or sidelined to the cultural side of the equation, like Guilbeault. So I think it appears that the accomplishing things and getting it done and working with others side of it is coming to the fore. We'll see how they execute.
And I think the ceremony will get underway momentarily. Scott, how important is today, like the selection of these people to delivering on what Corey just spelled out? And I may have to interrupt you to listen in, but I'll throw it your way.
I think it's important, obviously, but I think two other things are going to be important. One, what does the Prime Minister say about his priorities and the concentration of his agenda? How does he make certain that he signals it's focused as opposed to sprawling? So I'll be watching for that when he speaks. And the second thing is public service. Who does he put in charge? Does he recruit a couple of new deputy ministers? Does he recruit other people that have a demonstrated ability to execute on big projects and bring them in as special advisors, people that can help the public service move on? Does he keep the clerk? All of these questions I think are going to be vital. Also answering the big fundamental question, which is, can he achieve the things that he's made it pretty clear he'd like to achieve? And, it's not just one lever. Cabinet is one lever. Priorities and focus you bring as Prime Minister, the way you use that office and the platform, and then finally the way in which you enable and activate and incentivize the public service.
You're listening now to the start of, the instructions, I should say, to the crowd who have gathered for the swearing-in ceremony, which is scheduled to get Cabinet makes their way in, and there they are. The doors are open. They are making their way inside the room right now. As they do so, we will take you live through the ceremony in its entirety. We anticipate shortly thereafter the ceremony, Prime Minister Carney will step outside the doors of Rideau Hall and take questions from the reporters who have assembled here, and I can tell you there are many who are here. We don't anticipate that we will hear from individual ministers at this point in the day, but the Prime Minister will take questions. We'll listen in for a bit.
Secretaries of State
It's starting, right?
the Prime Minister, Their Excellencies, the Governor General of Canada, and Mr. Wood Fraser. Pour débuter la cérémonie, veuillez vous lever pour accueillir les ministres désignés, les secrétaires d'État désignés.
Secretaries of State designate, the Prime Minister, and Their Excellencies, the Governor General of Canada.
Mark Carney is coming, right?
Yep, and Mark Carney makes his way. A small cheer you can see
Yes.
And there is Prime Minister Mark Carney alongside Governor General Mary Simon and her husband, Wood Fraser, in advance there of the start of the ceremony, the entirety of the cabinet.
So it has been said like 24 new faces.
Yes.
It's gonna be
along with the 10 secretaries.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Ken McKillop, and I'm the Secretary to the Governor General, and I'd like to welcome everybody to Rideau Hall for the swearing in of the 30th Canadian Minister. I'd like to also take a moment to share with you a traditional activity that was initiated just prior to the beginning of the ceremony, the lighting of the holy, a traditional Inuit lamp. This lamp is used in the north to bring light and warmth to the home. We light the holik to mark important events here at Rideau Hall, such as today's ceremony. And we are grateful for the presence of Elder Ina Zakal from Hagnatring Nunavut, who lit the hulik and will maintain its light and warmth throughout the ceremony. Nagumik.
I'd like to now invite Anita McGregor to give a warm welcome.
Bonjour tout le monde. Hello everybody. Oops, this is like a reunion, our bi-monthly meeting. I'd like to welcome you to our traditional unceded lands, and for those of you who don't know what unceded means, is that we never signed treaty, and this goes back to the Royal Proclamation of 1763. So when I come here too as well, I find it very special because this was an important meeting place too, prior to contact, and we would meet and talk about what's going on the land, similar to what we're doing and the responsibility that all the ministers in the cabinet have today. I also bring my eagle feather. And our understanding is the eagle soars highest and has a higher view. And that's also the responsibility also of governance, to have a higher view, to project, because we're also here for the next 7 generations. And one of the biggest teachings too as well, I always bring this, is the spider, the interconnectedness of everything on the land, but also as a global nation too. So one of the biggest teachings too is what we do to the earth, we do to ourselves. So that's a big responsibility. So I'm going to honor our ancestors with a little prayer to welcome everybody. And I say, Miigwech. On jenne gashki tochama do se konshe no go mami kakina pamas jiktin is what goshe. Shwanish no in abigus. Miigwech oje kakina gagishan do no je mam de gain in the kimena. Shkaki question kasun in the kimena we do kakina pamas jik konje and avidwa and kakina kuchin in the kimena. Miigwech oje kakina ete kishigo kises to be kises. I should janang shak. We do pananokas no je na avidwa and kakina guchiak nigi. I should never show sinan. On je na gdo anda kakina guchi up mod sejik. I should we do kwa kakina mod sejik ena because me bachon in a 7 kagini shin shin up mod sian we do kwa kakina on to get a shop sejik. Want to get we do kwa kakina and jino and dog and up want to get in the shomsin on the gopness on a shitch in the double g shop. Come want to get come shit in as well go she showing the snow. I should we do kwa kakina. We wish na jik the magas the jik akas the jik kaye. We me God with jik no go chuana ki watch a shit chiminopamats watch. Me me gwetch, me gwetch, me gwetch, me gwetch. And again, as I said last 2 months ago, me gwetch is thank you in Algonquin, and I say it 4 times because this area is so special because it's the confluence of the rivers coming together, and it reminds us too as well that we also, our responsibility is balance, and the balance of the elements and the interconnection of everything. So, miigwech and congratulations to everybody. Merci.
Miigwech, Elder McGregor, thank you very much for being here today. Mr. John Hannaford, Clerk of the Privy Council and the Secretary to the Cabinet, will now seek the Governor General's consent to proceed. Maintenant que le gouverneur général a signifié
Now that the
son
Governor
approbation,
General has given approval, we will proceed with the swearing in of the 30th Ministry of Councils.
will please come forward as they are named.
இந்த நேரத்தில் ரிடோ ஹால் பால் ரூமில் எல்லா மக்களும் அமர்ந்திருக்கிறார்கள். அதே நேரத்தில் புதிய அரசின் அமைச்சரவையில் இடம்பெறும் எம்பிக்கள் எல்லாருமே கைதட்டலோடு உள்ள வந்திருக்கிறார்கள். நீங்களும் பார்த்துட்டு இருக்கிறீங்க. மாக்காணியின் அவர்களின் பேச்சு விரைவில் பேசுவார் என்றும் எதிர்பார்க்கப்படுகிறது. பார்க்கலாம்.
Minister responsible for Canada-US trade, intergovernmental affairs, and one
Been
Canadian economy.
getting the ceremony, right?
Yes.
I, Dominic LeBlanc, do swear
Au mieux de ma compétence et
that
de ma
to the
connaissance,
best of my
j'exécuterai
knowledge and
loyalement et
abilities,
fidèlement
I
les pouvoirs
will
et je m'acquitterai des
truly and
responsabilités
faithfully
qui m'ont
execute the
été
powers
confiées
and
en
trust
qualité
reposed
de
in me
président du
as
Conseil privé du
President
droit
of the Privy Council of the King's Council for Canada, Minister responsible for Canada-US
des
trade,
affaires
intergovernmental affairs,
de l'unité.
and one Canadian economy.
I, Dominic LeBlanc, do solemnly and sincerely promise and swear that I will truly and faithfully and to the best of my skill and knowledge execute the powers and trusts reposed in me as President of the King's Privy Council for Canada and Minister responsible for Canada-US trade, intergovernmental affairs, and one Canadian economy.
So Dominic LeBlanc retains a very significant portfolio under this new government, moving from what was known as international trade to now something called very specifically Canada-US trade, signifying how big of a deal, of course, the relationship between our two countries is. He will remain the person in the federal cabinet who oversees the relationship with provinces, and he adds to his title something called One Canadian Economy, which of course represents the promise that the Prime Minister made during the campaign to break down internal trade barriers between provinces and form, in his words, what he calls One Canadian Economy. Dominic LeBlanc retaining a very significant portfolio in that respect, largely focused on what's going on with the United States and our own Canadian and economic response to the tensions with our neighbor.
The Honourable Melanie Joly, Minister responsible for Economic Affairs of the Quebec region.
Mélanie Joly,
I, Melanie Joly, do solemnly and sincerely promise and swear that I will truly and faithfully, and to the best of my skill and knowledge, execute the powers and trusts reposed in me as a Minister of Industry and Minister responsible for Economic Affairs Development for the Quebec regions.
solemnly and sincerely promise and declare that I will truly and faithfully, and to the best of my skill and knowledge, execute the powers and trusts reposed in me as Minister of Industry and Minister responsible for Canada Economic Development for Quebec regions. That's good. Thank you.
Well, yeah, that was Honorable Melanie Joly. So her previous title was Minister of Foreign Affairs and International Development, but now she has taken the title of Economic Affairs of International Development.
That has been changed.
It was changed, yes. Same with Dominic LeBlanc. Little difference.
Slight difference.
Yeah, international trade. Now he's going as Canada-US
Yes.
trade.
Minister Anita Anand, who moves over to the portfolio of foreign affairs. The other minister who, of course, for a number of years held the industry portfolio was François-Philippe Champagne. It's also a significant portfolio, of course, against the backdrop of what's going on with the United States, and in particular when pursuing
Honourable
whatever kind of
François-Philippe
economic
Champagne.
development the Prime Minister wants to pursue. She will be rather key to that.
I, François-Philippe Champagne, do solemnly and sincerely promise and swear that I will truly and faithfully, and to the best of my skill and knowledge, execute the powers and trusts reposed in me as Minister of Finance and National Revenue.
I, François-Philippe Champagne, do solemnly and sincerely promise and swear that I will truly and faithfully, and to the best of my skill and knowledge, execute the powers and trusts reposed in me as Minister of Finance and National Revenue.
So yes, Honorable François-Philippe, also Minister of Finance, again, same title. Similar, added with the Minister of Revenue as well.
A significant portfolio, of course, with the economy so clearly in focus, as we heard frequently during the campaign and thereafter. He's a top Quebec kind of lieutenant, I guess you could say, as well, and was during the campaign for Prime Minister Carney. He previously served for a number of years overseeing the portfolio of industry, which Melanie Joly now assumes. So François-Philippe Champagne will serve as Finance Minister.
The Honourable Anita Anand, Minister of Foreign Affairs. Honorable Indira Anita Anand, the Minister.
The Honorable Anita Anand, Minister of Foreign Affairs.
Indira Anita Anand, do solemnly and sincerely promise and swear that I will truly and faithfully and to the best of my skill and knowledge execute the powers and trusts reposed in me as Minister of Foreign Affairs. Moi, Indira Anita Anand,
I, Indira Anita Anand, do solemnly and sincerely promise and swear that I will truly and faithfully and to the best of my skill and knowledge execute the powers.
Well, we have Honorable Anita Anand, who's taking the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. She was previously the Minister of Innovation, Science and Industry.
So that's a change.
That's a change.
Yeah. அதே நேரத்தில் டொமினிக் லிப்லாங்கை பற்றி நாங்கள் பார்த்தால் கவுன்சிலிங் தலைவராகவும் கனடா அமெரிக்க வர்த்தக உறவுகளுக்கு பொறுப்பான அமைச்சராகவும் அதே நேரத்தில் மாநிலங்களுக்கு இடையிலான பணியகங்களுக்கு பொறுப்பான அமைச்சராகவும் ஒற்றை கனேடிய பொருளாதாரம் எனப்படும் பொருளாதார ஒருமைப்பாட்டுக்கான அமைச்சராகவும் பதவியேற்கிறார். கிட்டத்தட்ட 3 அமைச்சரவை பதவி அவர் பொறுப்பேற்றிருக்கிறார் என்பதும் ஒரு முக்கியமான விடயம்.
Minister of Procurement during the COVID pandemic. She represents a riding just outside of Toronto in Oakville. She was one of the people who was not going to run again under the Liberals. She had decided to leave politics, she said, to go back to academia and spend time with her family. But once Mark Carney became leader, she decided to re-enter politics, and she will now serve as Minister of Foreign Affairs.
The Honorable Patricia Hyden, Minister of Jobs and Families, Minister responsible for the Federal Economic Development Agency for Northern Ontario. Patricia Hyden, Minister.
The Honorable Patricia Hyden, Minister of Families for Economic Development of Northern.
அதே நேரத்தில் மெலனி ஜோலியை பற்றி பார்த்தால் வெளிவிவகார அமைச்சராக இருந்த தன் பழைய பொறுப்பிலிருந்து மாற்றப்பட்டு தற்போது தொழில் அமைச்சராக நியமிக்கப்படுகிறார். அத்துடன் கியூபெக் பகுதியில் பொருளாதார மேம்பாட்டுக்கு பொறுப்பான அமைச்சராகவும் பதவியேற்றிருக்கிறார். பார்த்துட்டு
Moi, Patricia Hyden,
I, Patricia Hyden, do solemnly and sincerely promise and swear that I will truly and faithfully, and to the best of my skill and knowledge, execute the powers and trust reposed in me as Minister of Jobs and Families and Minister responsible for the Economic Development Agency for Northern Ontario.
Patty Hyden has been Minister of Indigenous Services since 2021. She represents a riding in Thunder Bay. She moves to a brand new portfolio, as you heard there, jobs and families, as well as the Minister responsible for economic development in Northern Ontario. Again, she represents a riding in Thunder Bay. She was for a long time the Minister who oversaw Indigenous Services for almost, I think, just almost 4 years, in fact.
The Honorable Stephen Gilbo.
அதே வழியில் அனிதா ஆனந்தை பற்றி நாங்கள் பார்த்தால் முன்னாள் தொழில் அமைச்சராக இருந்தவர் தற்பொழுது வெளிவிவகார அமைச்சராகவும் புதிய பதவியை பொறுப்பேற்றிருக்கிறார்.
Moi, Stephen Guilbeault, je promets et déclare solennellement et sincèrement, au nom de ma compétence et de ma connaissance, j'exécuterai loyalement et fidèlement.
Stephen Guilbeault, do solemnly and sincerely promise and swear that I will execute the powers and trusts reposed in me as Minister of Canadian Culture and Minister responsible for official languages.
To the best of my skill and knowledge, execute execute the powers and trusts reposed in me as Minister of Canadian Identity and Culture and Minister responsible for official languages.
Environmentalist
One by one only they are
he's
releasing everyone, right?
portfolio
Yeah.
that he received just before the election as the Minister of Canadian Identity, and Culture. But that is, of course, a significant departure from the role he served in for a number of years, overseeing environment and climate change. So he remains in cabinet, however, not in the capacity that he used to for those years in environment or climate change. Instead, focused on what he had been tasked with just before the start of the election campaign. He will oversee what is being called Canadian Identity and Culture. He'll also be the minister responsible for official languages.
Attorney General of Canada and Minister responsible for the Atlantic Opportunities Agency. L'honorable Sean Simon Fraser, ministre de la Justice.
The Honorable Sean Simon Fraser.
Et ministre responsable de l'Agence Promotion économique de Canada Atlantique.
Stephen Gilbert. He's
That
the
was
former
the previous
environment minister, right?
Yeah.
Promise and declare that I will truly and faithfully, and to the best of my skill and knowledge, execute the powers and trusts reposed in me as Minister of Justice and Attorney General of Canada and Minister responsible for the Atlantic Canada Opportunities Agency.
Well, Sean Fraser now appointed Minister of Justice and Attorney General. So previously Minister of Justice was Gary Anand Sangre.
Yeah.
So that means he's getting a different title this
Yes.
time.
Moi, Sean Simon Fraser, je promets et déclare solennellement et sincèrement qu'au mieux de mes compétences et de mes connaissances, j'exécuterai loyalement et fidèlement le pouvoir et m'acquitterai des responsabilités qui m'ont été confiées en qualité de ministre de la Justice et procureur général du Canada et ministre responsable de l'Agence de promotion économique du Canada Atlantique. En tant que ministre de la Justice, je veillerai au respect de la loi dans l'administration des affaires publiques. En tant que procureur général du Canada, je ferai respecter la Constitution, la primauté du droit et l'indépendance de la magistrature et de la fonction du procureur.
Sean Fraser has represented the riding of Central Nova out in Nova Scotia since 2015. His story kind of another unique one in parallel to Anita Anand. He had decided not to run again in this election. And then once Mark Carney became leader of the party shortly thereafter, he announced that he would in fact run again. He held a number of significant roles under the Trudeau government, including the Minister for Immigration. And then
They have released the
the
full
government
list.
had decided to focus on the plight of young Canadians to be able to afford a home. He oversaw the housing file. Once again, though, he had thought that he would, or he had said he was not going to run again, and in fact is now running and becomes the Attorney General and Justice Minister for the federal government.
முழுமையான அமைச்சர்கள் பட்டியல் தற்பொழுது வெளியாக இருக்கிறது. ஷாஃப்கத் அலி நிதி சபையின் தலைவராக நியமிக்கப்பட்டிருக்கிறார். அதே நேரத்தில் ரெபேகா அல்டி மகுடம் மற்றும் அட்யூவன் வாசிகள் உறவுகள் பொறுப்பான அமைச்சராக பதவியேற்றிருக்கிறார். அனிதா ஆனந்த் முதல் கூறியது போல வெளிவிவகார அமைச்சராக, அதே நேரத்தில் கரி ஆனந்த் சங்கரி பொது பாதுகாப்பு அமைச்சராக தேர்ந்தெடுக்கப்பட இருக்கிறார். அதே நேரத்தில் பிரான்சுவா பிலிப் ஷாம்பெயின் நிதி மற்றும் தேசிய வருவாய் அமைச்சராக பதவியேற்றிருக்கிறார். அதே நேரத்தில் இன்னும் அந்த லிஸ்ட் இப்போ ரிலீஸ் ஆகியிருக்கு, ஒவ்வொருத்தராக வந்து பதவியேற்பார்கள். இதே நேரத்தில் ரெபேகா ஷாடாந்த் இதே நேரத்தில் வடக்கு மற்றும் ஆர்டிக் விவகாரங்கள் கனடிய வடக்கு பொருளாதார மேம்பாட்டு அமைப்புக்கு பொறுப்பான அமைச்சராக பதவியேற்க இருக்கிறார். ஜூலி ட்ரேப்ரூசின் அவர் சூழலியல் மற்றும் காலநிலை மாற்றத்துக்கு பொறுப்பான அமைச்சராக பதவியேற்க போகிறார். அதே வழியில் ஷான் ஃப்ரேசர் நீதியமைச்சர் மற்றும் கனடாவின் சட்ட ஆலோசகர் அட்லாண்டிக் கனடா வாய்ப்பு அமைப்புக்கு பொறுப்பான பதவியை ஏற்க இருக்கிறார். கிறிஸ்டியா ஃபின்லாந்து அவர் வந்து போக்குவரத்து மற்றும் உள்நாட்டு வர்த்தக அமைச்சராக பதவியேற்க இருக்கிறார். ஸ்டீவன் கில்பர்ட் கனடிய அடையாளம் மற்றும் கலாச்சார அமைச்சர் உத்தியோகபூர்வ மொழிக்கு பொறுப்பானவராக நியமிக்கப்பட இருக்கிறார். அதே நேரத்தில் மண்டிகல் மாஸ்டி அவர் சேவைகள் அமைச்சர் அடிவன்வாசி சேவைகள் அமைச்சாக அவர் பதவியேற்க இருக்கிறார். அதே நேரத்தில் பார்ட்டி ஹைட் அவர் வந்து வேலை வாய்ப்புகள் மற்றும் குடும்பங்கள் அமைச்சர் வடக்கு ஒன்றாரிய பொருளாதார மேம்பாட்டு அமைப்புக்கு பொறுப்பானவராகவும் தேர்ந்தெடுக்கப்பட இருக்கிறார். அதே வேளையில் டிம் ஹாட்சன் ஆற்றல் மற்றும் இயற்கை வளங்கள் அமைச்சர், மெலனி ஜோலி தொழில் அமைச்சர், கியூபெக் பகுதிக்கான பொருளாதார மேம்பாட்டுக்கு பொறுப்பானவராகவும், அதே நேரத்தில் டொமினிக் லெப்லாங்க் ராஜாங்க பிரிவு கவுன்சிலின் தலைவர், அதே நேரத்தில் கனடா அமெரிக்க வர்த்தகம், மாகாண உறவுகள் மற்றும் ஒருங்கிணைந்த கனடிய பொருளாதாரத்துக்கு பொறுப்பானவராகவும் இருக்க போகிறார். அதே நேரத்தில் ஜோயல் லைட் ஃபவுண்ட் அவர் வந்து அரசு பணித்துறை மாற்றம் மற்றும் பொதுப்பணிகள் கொள்முதல் அமைச்சராகவும் பதவியேற்க போகிறார். இதே வேளையில் 16 அமைச்சர் உங்களுக்கு நான் சொல்லியிருக்கிறேன்.
I think
Yes.
we are witnessing Gary Anand Sangri now.
Yes. So he's இப்பொழுது கேரி ஆனந்த் சங்கரி அவர்கள் பதவியேற்கிறார். பொது பாதுகாப்பு அமைச்சராக இன்றைய நாள் அவர் பதவியேற்கிறார்.
Gary Anand Sangri, do solemnly and sincerely promise and swear that I will truly and faithfully, and to the best of my skill and knowledge, execute the powers and trusts reposed in me as Minister of Public Safety.
Gary Anand Sangri, also from the Greater Toronto area, just east of Toronto, represents a Scarborough riding. He was named to cabinet, or was part of cabinet at dissolution. He was the Minister of Justice and Attorney General at that point. He has now moved over to the public safety file. Sean Fraser, who you just saw a few moments ago, takes over as the Minister for Justice, and the Attorney General of Canada. So Gary Anand Sangri becomes the Minister of Public Safety, taking that role over from David McGuinty, who becomes the Minister of Defense.
Small Business and Tourism. Honorable Richie Valdez, Ministre des Femmes et de l'égalité des genres et Secrétariat d'État.
அதே வழியில் ஹீத் மெக்டொனால்ட் விவசாயம் மற்றும் வேளாண்மை உணவுத்துறை அமைச்சராக பதவியேற்கப் போகிறார். ஸ்டீவன் மெகனன் பொதுமக்கள் சபையில் அரசு தலைவராகவும், அதே போல் டேவிட் ஜே மெக்கெண்டி தேசிய பாதுகாப்பு அமைச்சராகவும், அதே நேரத்தில் லீனா தியாப் அவர் குடிபெயர்வுகள், அகதிகள் மற்றும் குடியுரிமை அமைச்சராக பதவியேற்கப் போகிறார். இது இப்படி நிறைய கிட்டத்தட்ட 28 அமைச்சரவை பதவியேற்கப் போகிறார்கள் இன்றைய நாள். மார்ஜோரி மிச்சேல் சுகாதாரத்துறை அமைச்சர், எலினர் ஒலிசெக்கி அவர் வந்து அவசரகால மேலாண்மை மற்றும் சமூக சகிப்பு திறன் அமைச்சராகவும் பொருளாதார மேம்பாட்டுக்கு பொறுப்பாகவும் இன்று பதவியேற்கப் போகிறார். அதே வேளையில் ஜோயான் தாம்சன் இன்றைய நாள் மீன்வளத்துறை அமைச்சராக பதவியேற்கப் போகிறார். ரெச்சி வால்டல்ஸ் பெண்கள் மற்றும் பாலின சமத்துவத்திற்கான அமைச்சராகவும் ராஜாங்க செயலாளர், அதாவது சிறு தொழில்கள் மற்றும் சுற்றுலாத்துறைக்கான அமைச்சராக இன்றைய நாள் பதவியேற்கப் போகிறார்.
And Secretary of State of Small Business and Tourism. Thank you.
You can see Richie Valdez getting very emotional as she gets the title of Minister of Women and Gender Equality.
Yes.
And Secretary of State. Like, if you remember, we covered her campaigns also here
yes.
in Streetsville, Mississauga. And yeah, she's proud to get this ministry.
இந்த 28 பேரையும் தாண்டி இன்னும் 10 பேர் ராஜாங்க செயலாளர்களாகவும் பதவியேற்கப் போகிறார்கள். 10 பேர் இருக்கிறார்கள். அது கிராமப்புற மேம்பாட்டுக்காக பெக்லி பெலிஞ்சர், அதே நேரத்தில் ஸ்டீஃபன் பாதுகாப்பு கொள்முதலுக்காகவும், அனோ கெனி குழந்தைகள் மற்றும் இளையோருக்கான பதவியை ராஜாங்க செயலாளராக அவர் பதவியேற்கப் போகிறார். அதே வேளையில் மெக்லீன் ஸ்டஃப்னி முதியோர் நலன், நதாலி இயற்கை வளங்களுக்காக, ரூபி சஹோட்டா குற்றச் செயல்கள் எதிர்க்கும் துறைக்காகவும், ரந்தீப் சராய் சர்வதேச வளர்ச்சிக்காகவும், அடம் கோவடன் அவர் விளையாட்டுக்காகவும், ஜான் வந்து தொழிலாளர் நலனுக்காகவும், இப்படி 10 பேர் இந்த ராஜாங்க அமைச்சர்களாக பதவியேற்கப் போகிறார். Those are the secretaries of state.
Yes.
So they
Yes.
are the rest of 10. Yeah.
Reposed in me as leader of the government in the House of Commons.
Sincerely promise and swear that I will truly and faithfully, and to the best of my skill and knowledge, execute the powers and trusts reposed in me as leader of the government in the House of Commons.
இந்த வெளியிடப்பட்ட அமைச்சரவை புதிய தலைமுறையையும் அனுபவசாலிகளையும் இணைக்கும் வகையில் அமைக்கப்பட்டுள்ளது என்று நாங்களும் நம்புகிறோம். இன்னும் 5 வருடங்கள் இருக்கிறது, பொறுத்திருந்து பார்க்கலாம்.
Government House Leader, I believe when Karina Gold went on maternity leave, he then served as Minister of Labor and now is back as House Leader. This will be a key role in Parliament. It is at all times, but in particular when there's a minority, because of course you need support from other parties in order to advance your agenda. He will be the key point person for the government in those kinds of negotiations. So that's Steve McKinnon. He becomes the government House Leader.
David Joseph McGinty, Minister.
The Honorable David Joseph McGinney,
Minister of National Defense.
Now we have David McGinty taking the Minister of National Defense. Formerly, he was the Minister of Public Safety and Emergency Preparedness.
Do solemnly and sincerely promise and declare that I will truly and faithfully, and to the best of my skill and knowledge, execute the powers and trusts reposed in me as Minister of National Defense.
I, David Joseph McGinty, do solemnly and sincerely promise and swear that I will truly and faithfully, and to the best of my skill and knowledge, execute the powers and trusts reposed in me as Minister of National Defense.
David McGinty, an Ottawa area member of Parliament, brother of former Ontario Premier Dalton McGinty, assumes the national defense portfolio. He used to serve as Minister of Public Safety under the previous government, in particular when all the issues at the border were being discussed and debated with the United States. He takes over national defense from Bill Blair, one of the few high-profile Trudeau-era cabinet ministers who are nowhere to be seen today. Bill Blair no longer in cabinet, but David McGinty becomes the Minister of National Defense.
The Honorable Joanne Thompson, Minister of Fisheries. Honorable Joanne Thompson, Minister.
The Honorable Joanne Thompson, Minister of Fisheries.
Solemnly and sincerely promise and swear that I will truly and faithfully, and to the best of my skill and knowledge, execute the powers and trusts reposed in me as Minister of Fisheries.
Joanne Thompson represents the riding of St. John's in Newfoundland and Labrador. She retains her position granted to her just before the election campaign as Minister of Fisheries, of course, a very important ministry in that part of the country, but to the whole country as well. She used to serve as Minister for Seniors. She will now focus on fisheries, once again representing the riding of St. John's.
The Honorable Shafkat Ali, President of the Treasury Board. Shafkat Ali, President.
There are 3 MPs from Brampton.
Yes.
President of the Treasury Board.
As Shaftak Ali also is from Brampton.
I, Shafkat Ali, do declare that I will be faithful and bear true allegiance to His Majesty King Charles III, King of Canada, his heirs and successors. I, Shafkat Ali, do solemnly and sincerely declare that I shall be a true and faithful servant to His Majesty King Charles III as a member of His Majesty's Privy Council for Canada. I will in all things to be treated, debated, and resolved in Privy Council faithfully, honestly, and truly declare my mind and my opinion.
இதேவேளையில் முக்கியமாக பார்த்தால் கனடாவின் எல்லைகளில் இருந்து எல்லைக்குள் நிலைநிறுத்தப்பட்ட பிராந்திய பிரதிநிதித்துவத்துக்கு அவசியமான இந்த அமைச்சரவையில் ஒன்றிலிருந்து மூவரும் பிரம்டனுக்கு, அதாவது ஒன்டாரியோவில் இருந்து அமைச்சரவையிடம் பிடித்திருப்பது மிக முக்கியமாக குறிப்பிடத்தக்க ஒரு விடயம். ரூபி சஹோட்டா குற்ற செயல்களை எதிர்க்கும் துறைக்கான ராஜாங்க செயலாளராகவும், அதே நேரத்தில் மனிந்தர் சிது அவர் சர்வதேச வர்த்தக அமைச்சராகவும், ஷஃப்கத் அலி நிதி சபையின் தலைவராகவும் தேர்ந்தெடுக்கப்பட்டிருக்கிறார். இவர்கள் 3 பேரும் பிரம்டனில் இருந்து தேர்வு செய்யப்பட்ட 3 எம்பிக்கள். இந்த பிராந்தியம் முன்பு லிபரல்களில் ஆதரவை பெற்ற ஒரு கோட்டையாக இருந்தாலும் சமீபத்திய தேர்தலில் கன்சர்வேட்டிவ்கள் முன்னேற்றம் கண்டுள்ளனர் என்பதும் குறிப்பிடத்தக்க ஒரு விடயம்.
Some of the ministers that are going to stay in their previous role itself is François Philippe, who remains the finance minister, and we have Chrystia Freeland, who keeps her title of transport portfolio, and Stephen Gilbert is still in charge of Canadian industry and culture and official languages. They just have little tweaks in their titles, but basically their roles and responsibilities are going to be the same. And Dominic LeBlanc is overseeing Canada-US trade, more focused on this in international trade in portfolio as last time. So he also remains president of the King's Privy Council, and Joanne Thompson also stays as in the Ministry of Fisheries.
President of the Treasury Board, that's Shafkat Ali, who represents the riding of Brampton Centre. So Brampton, just one of those key electoral constituencies just outside of Toronto and the Greater Toronto Area.
The Honorable Rebecca Alty, Minister of Crown Indigenous Relations. Rebecca Alty, Ministre des Relations Couronnes Autochtones.
Faithful and bear true allegiance to His Majesty King Charles III, King of Canada, his heirs and successors. I, Rebecca Alty, do solemnly and sincerely declare that I shall be a true and faithful servant to His Majesty King Charles III as a member of His Majesty's Privy Council for Canada. I will in all things to be treated, debated, and resolved in Privy Council faithfully, honestly, and truly declare my mind and my opinion. I shall keep secret all matters committed and revealed to me in this capacity, or that shall be secretly treated of in council. Generally, in all things, I shall do as a faithful and true servant ought to do for His Majesty. I, Rebecca Alty, do solemnly and sincerely promise and declare that I will truly and faithfully, and to the best of my skill and knowledge, execute the powers and trusts reposed in me as Minister of Crown Indigenous Relations.
Another new face joining the ranks of cabinet. This is Rebecca Alty. She is a member of Parliament for the Northwest Territories. She was just elected in this election. She's well known to the area, though. She was the mayor of Yellowknife from 2018 until she resigned that post to run for the federal election. And she also was a city councillor for Yellowknife for the 6 years that preceded her time as mayor. So a long time in municipal politics. In Yellowknife, she becomes the MP for the Northwest Territories. She is the MP, I should say, for the Northwest Territories, and becomes the Minister of Crown Indigenous Relations.
The Honorable Rebecca Chartrand, Minister of Northern and Arctic Affairs and Minister responsible for the Canadian Northern Economic Development Agency. Donc, Rebecca Chartrand, Ministre des Affaires des Nord et de l'Arctique et Ministre responsable de l'Agence canadienne de développement
Northern
économique du Nord.
Activities and the Canadian Economic Development Agency for the North.
I, Rebecca Chartrand, do declare I will be faithful and bear true allegiance to His Majesty King Charles III, King of Canada, his heirs and successors. I, Rebecca Chartrand, do solemnly and sincerely declare that I shall be a true and faithful servant to His Majesty King Charles III as a member of His Majesty's Privy Council for Canada. I will in all things to be treated, debated, and resolved in Privy Council faithfully, honestly, and truly declare my mind and my opinion. I shall keep secret all matters committed and revealed to me in this capacity, or that shall be secretly treated of in council. Generally, in all things, I shall do as a faithful and true servant ought to do for His Majesty. I, Rebecca Chartrand, do solemnly and sincerely promise and declare that I will truly and faithfully and to the best of my skill and knowledge execute the powers and trusts reposed in me as Minister of Northern and Arctic Affairs and Minister responsible for the Canadian Northern Economic Development Agency.
Rebecca Chartrand, a couple of notable things, took the riding, long-held NDP riding in Churchill, Manitoba from New Democrat Nikki Ashton. She is Anishinaabe, the president and CEO of Indigenous Strategy, and she becomes the minister who will oversee Northern and Arctic affairs, which during the campaign, the Prime Minister placed a high level of importance on, given the sovereignty and security issues surrounding the Arctic. So now her portfolio will focus on that. She will also be the minister responsible for the Canadian Northern Economic Development Agency. So that's the agency tasked with fostering economic growth in the northern part of this country.
The Honourable Julie Aviva Davidson, Minister of Environment and Climate Change. L'Honorable Julie Daviva Davidson.
The Honourable Julie Daviva Davidson, Minister of Environment and Climate Change.
Do declare that I will be faithful and bear true allegiance to His Majesty King Charles III, King of Canada, his heirs and successors. Moi, Julie Aviva Dabrussin,
Julie Aviva Dabrussin, do declare that I will be faithful and bear true allegiance to His Majesty King Charles III, King of Canada, his heirs and successors.
I, Julie Aviva Dabrussin, do solemnly and sincerely declare that I shall be true and faithful servant to His Majesty King Charles III as a member of His Majesty's Privy Council for Canada. I will in all things to be treated, debated, and resolved in Privy Council faithfully, honestly, and truly declare my mind and my opinion. I shall keep secret all matters committed and revealed to me in this capacity, or that shall be secretly treated of in Council. Generally, in all things, I shall do as a faithful and true servant ought to do for His Majesty. Moi, Julie Aviva Dabrussin, je déclare solennellement et sincèrement
Dabrussin, do solemnly and sincerely declare that I shall be a true and faithful servant to His Majesty King Charles III, as a member of His Majesty's Privy Council for Canada. I will, in all things, to be treated, debated, and resolved in Privy Council, faithfully, honestly, and truly declare my mind and opinion. I shall keep secret all matters committed and revealed to me in this capacity, or that shall be secretly treated of in Council. Generally, in all things I shall do as a faithful and true servant ought to do for His Majesty.
I, Julie Aviva Dabrussin, do solemnly and sincerely promise and declare that I will truly and faithfully, and to the best of my skill and knowledge, execute the powers and trusts reposed in me as Minister of Environment and Climate Change. Moi, Julie Aviva Dabrussin.
I, Julie Aviva Dabrussin, do solemnly and sincerely promise and declare that I will truly and faithfully, and to the best of my skill and knowledge, execute the powers and trusts reposed in me as Minister of Environment and Climate Change.
Julie Dabrussin represents the riding in Toronto of Toronto Danforth, has done so for the past decade, since 2015. That was, of course, the former leader of the NDP, Jack Layton's riding as well. She hasn't served in cabinet, but she has been parliamentary secretary to both the Minister of Natural Resources and Environment and Climate Change. She takes over this portfolio now. Most notably, Stephen Guilbeault served as Minister of Environment for a number of years under former Prime Minister Justin Trudeau. So she is a new addition to cabinet, becoming the Minister of Environment.
L'honorable Nina Metlach-Diab, ministre de l'Immigration. Nina Metlach-Diab, Minister of Immigration, Refugees and Citizenship.
Moi, Lena Metlach-Diab,
I, Lena Metlach-Diab, do declare that I will be faithful and bear true allegiance to His Majesty King Charles III, King of Canada, his heirs and successors.
I, Lena Metlach-Diab, do swear that I will be faithful and bear true allegiance to His Majesty King Charles III, King of Canada, his heirs and successors. Moi, Lena Metlach-Diab,
I, Lena Metlach-Diab, do solemnly and sincerely declare that I shall be a true and faithful servant to His Majesty King Charles III as a member of His Majesty's Privy Council for Canada.
Well, that's
I
our new
will in
immigration
all
minister.
things to be treated, debated,
The main person.
and resolved in Privy
The one that
Council
matters to
faithfully,
Yes.
all
honestly,
immigrants.
and truly declare my mind and my opinion. I shall
இந்த நேரத்தில் சில விடயங்களை நாங்கள் பார்த்தால் சில மாதங்களுக்கு முன்பு ஷான் ஃப்ரேசரும் அனிதா ஆனந்தும் அரசியல் வாழ்க்கையை விட்டு விலக இருந்தார்கள். ஆனால் இப்போது அவர்கள் இருவரும் முக்கிய புதிய அமைச்சு பொறுப்புகளை ஏற்றார்கள். நீங்களும் பார்த்தீர்கள். அனிதா ஆனந்த் புதிய வெளிவிவகார அமைச்சராகவும், ஷான் ஃப்ரேசர் புதிய நீதியமைச்சர் மற்றும் கனடாவின் சட்ட ஆலோசகராகவும் அவர் கடமையேற்றிருந்தார். அதே வேளையில் இருவரும் முன்னதாகவே மீண்டும் எம்பிபியாக போட்டியிடப் போவதில்லை என்று அறிவித்திருந்தாலும் மாகாணியின் வருகையுடன் அவர்கள் தங்கள் முடிவையும் மாற்றினார்கள் என்பதும் ஒரு முக்கியமான விடயம். ஆனந்த் லிபரல் கட்சி தலைமையில் போட்டியிடும் போது போட்டியில் ஈடுபட தீர்மானித்ததும் ஃப்ரேசர் அதன் பிறகு முடிவையும் மாற்றிக்கொண்டார். லிபரல்கள் கருத்து கணிப்புகளின்படி 25 புள்ளிகள் பின்னிலையில் இருந்த போது இவர்களை விலக சொல்லிவிட்டனர். ஆனால் கட்சியின் நிலைமை மீண்டும் உயரும் போது தாங்கள் போட்டியிட தயார் என தெரிவித்திருந்தார்கள். இவர்கள் இருவரும் ஜஸ்டின் ட்ரூடோ அரசியல் பல அமைச்சு பொறுப்புகளையும் வகித்தவர்கள் ஆவார்கள் என்பதும் ஒரு முக்கியமான விடயம்.
Well, we could see that, President Mark Carney has brought back the 7 regional development agencies that we saw in former Prime Minister Trudeau's last cabinet, plus that new title of LeBlanc. So the list is Rebecca Chartrand, who is the Canadian Northern Economic Development Agency, Sean Fraser of the Atlantic Canada Opportunities Agency, Patty Haju, Federal Economic Development Agency for Northern Ontario, Melanie Joly, Canada Economic Development for Quebec regions, and Eleanor Olszewski.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness. That's a tongue twister. So she's the Frères Economic Development of Canada, Gregor Robertson of Pacific Economic Development in Canada, Evan Solomon, Federal Economic Development Agency for Southern Ontario, and Dominic LeBlanc, One Canadian Economy. So those were the regional economic development portfolios who come back in return.
பிராந்திய பொறுப்புகளுடன் நியமிக்கப்பட்ட அமைச்சர்கள் ரெபேக்கா சார்டாண்ட் கனடியன் எக்கனாமிக் ஏஜென்சியாக, அதாவது வடக்கு பொருளாதார மேம்பாட்டுக்காக நியமிக்கப்பட்டிருக்கிறார். ஷான் ஃப்ரேசர் அட்லாண்டிக் கனடா வாய்ப்பு அமைச்சராகவும், அதே நேரத்தில் பாட் ஹைட் வடக்கு ஒன்டாரியோவுக்கு கூட்டாட்சி பொருளாதார மேம்பாட்டு முகமையாகவும், மெலனி ஜாலி கியூபெக் பகுதிக்கான கனடா பொருளாதார மேம்பாட்டுத் துறைக்காகவும், எலினார் ஒல்செஸ்கி ஃப்ரேரிஸ் பொருளாதார மேம்பாட்டு கனடாவுக்காகவும், அதே வேளையில் எலினார் உங்களுக்கு நான் இப்போ கூறினேன் ராபர்ட்சன் பசிபிக் பொருளாதார மேம்பாட்டு கனடாவுக்காகவும், எவன் சாலமன் தென் தெற்கு ஒன்டாரியோ கூட்டாட்சி பொருளாதார மேம்பாட்டு முகமைக்காகவும் டொமினிக் லெப்லாங் ஒற்றை கனடிய பொருளாதாரம் வான் கனடியன் எக்கனமி எனப்படும் விடயத்துக்கு அவர் பொறுப்பாக்கப்பட்டிருக்கிறாங்க. பிராந்திய பொறுப்புகளில் நியமிக்கப்பட்ட அமைச்சர்களாக இவர்கள் இருக்கிறார்கள். மாகாணியின் அமைச்சரவையில் ஜஸ்டின் ட்ரூடோவின் கடைசி அமைச்சரவை போலவே 7 பிராந்திய பொருளாதார மேம்பாட்டு முகமைகள் மீண்டும் கொண்டு வரப்பட்டிருக்கிறது. ஒரு முக்கியமான விடயம், அதுதான் உங்களுக்கு நான் இப்போ சொல்லியிருந்தேன். இதற்கு பிறகு டொமினிக் லெப்லாங்குக்கு ஒருங்கிணைந்த கனடிய பொருளாதாரம் என்ற புதிய பொறுப்பும் வழங்கப்பட்டிருக்கிறது. ஒவ்வொரு பிராந்தியத்திற்கும் தனித்துவமான மேம்பாட்டு கவனத்திற்கும் வழங்கும் வகையில் அமைக்கப்பட்டிருக்கிறதும் குறிப்பிடத்தக்க ஒரு விடயம்.
I will in all things to be treated, debated, and resolved in
You know something interesting, Nirosh?
Yeah.
A few months ago, Sean Fraser and Anita Anand were both planning to leave.
Leave, yes.
Yeah.
That's what.
Did you mention that?
Yeah. I've mentioned that same thing. But after when Carney is about to come, so then they
changed their mind and came back. Right, what we're witnessing now is Mandigal Masti, who is being appointed the Minister of Indigenous Services.
Execute the powers and trusts reposed in me as Minister of Indigenous Services.
There are new names with new titles, right?
Sorry?
There are new names with new titles.
Yeah.
As Minister of Indigenous Services, she is a brand new face, both to Parliament but also to Cabinet. She previously served as the Grand Chief of the Grand Council of the Crees for about 4 years. She was the first woman to hold that job.
The Honourable Tim Hodgson, Minister of Energy and Natural Resources. Tim Hodgson, Minister.
The Honourable Tim Hodgson, Minister of Energy and Natural Resources.
அதே வழியில் கனடாவில் பொது பாதுகாப்பு அமைச்சர் என்பது நாட்டின் மக்கள் பாதுகாப்பு, அதே வேளையில் தேசிய பாதுகாப்பு, அவசர நிலை மேலாண்மை, அதே வேளையில் குடியுரிமை மற்றும் எல்லை பாதுகாப்பு உள்ளிட்ட பல முக்கிய பொறுப்புகளை ஏற்கும் ஒரு பதவியாக இருக்கிறது. இந்த அமைச்சின் கீழ் காணும் முக்கியமான அமைப்புகளாக செயற்படும் விடயங்கள் யார் யார் என்று நாங்கள் இப்போ பார்க்கலாம். ராயல் கனடியன் மவுண்டட் போலீஸ், அதாவது கனடிய தந்திர போலி என்று சொல்லப்படும். அதே நேரத்தில் உளவுத்துறை சேவை, எல்லை பாதுகாப்பு நிறுவனம், அவசர நிலைமை மேலாண்மை, அதே வேளையில் இந்த அமைச்சின் முக்கிய பணிகளாக நாட்டின் உள்நாட்டு பாதுகாப்பை உறுதிப்படுத்துதல், பயங்கரவாதம் மற்றும் குற்றங்களை தடுப்பது, எல்லைகளை பாதுகாப்பது, இயற்கை பேரழிவு மற்றும் அவசர நிலைகளை அந்த பொதுமக்களை பாதுகாப்பது மட்டுமில்லாமல் குடியுரிமை மற்றும் குடியேற்ற கொள்கைகளிலிருந்து மேற்பார்வை வகிப்பதும் ஒரு முக்கியமான விடயமாக இருக்கிறது. அதுதான் மினிஸ்டர் ஆஃப் பப்ளிக் சேஃப்டி எனப்படுவது. அந்த பப்ளிக் சேஃப்டியை தான் ஆனந்த் சங்கரி அவர்கள் பொறுப்பேற்றிருக்கிறார். கனடாவின் பொது பாதுகாப்பு அமைச்சராக பொறுப்பேற்றுள்ள இனத்துக்கான சாதனைக்கு நாங்களும் வாழ்த்துக்களை கூறுகிறோம் திரு ஆனந்த் சங்கரி அவர்களுக்கு. அதாவது தமிழர்களின் நீண்டகால போராட்டத்தின் ஒரு வரலாற்று பயணத்தில் ஈழத்திலிருந்து அகதிகளாக புறப்பட்டு கனடா அரசில் முக்கியமான தீர்மானங்கள் எடுக்கும் அமைச்சு பதவியை தமிழரான ஒருவராக ஆனந்த் சங்கரி அவர்கள் பொறுப்பேற்பதில் நாங்களும் பெருமிதம் அடைகின்றோம்.
Was the chair of the board of directors at Hydro One, a position he stepped aside from in order to run for election in Markham. He becomes the Minister of Natural Resources taking over for energy and natural resources, I should say, taking over for Jonathan Wilkinson, who had served in that role for a number of years, one of the few high-profile Trudeau-era ministers who is not in this cabinet, so a significant departure in this role. Tim Hodgson, the MP for Markham, becomes Minister of Natural Resources.
Joelle Lightbound, Minister of
The Honourable Joelle Lightbound, Minister of Government Transformation, Public Works and Procurement.
Minister of Government Transformation, Public Works and Procurement.
Moi, Joël Lightbound.
I, Joelle Lightbound, do declare that I will be faithful and bear true allegiance to His Majesty King Charles III, King of Canada, his heirs and successors.
Joël Lightbound.
I, Joelle Lightbound, do solemnly and sincerely declare that I shall be a true and faithful servant to His Majesty King Charles III, as a member of His Majesty's Privy Council for Canada. I will in all things to be treated, debated, and resolved in Privy Council, faithfully, honestly, and truly declare my mind and my opinions. I shall keep secret all matters.
Well, as Nirosh was saying, in Canada, the Minister of Public Safety holds a critical position, responsible for ensuring the safety and security of, the country and its citizens. This minister oversees several key areas, including national security, emergency management, citizenship, and border protection. So the following major agencies operated under the Minister of Public Safety are the RCMP, which is the Royal Canadian Mounted Police, Canada's National Police Services. Then we have the CSIS, which is the Canadian Security Intelligence Services. We have the CBSA, the Canada Border Services Agency, responsible for border control and enforcement, and also emergency management, handles disaster preparedness and emergency responses. So the key responsibilities of the minister includes ensuring domestic security and public safety, preventing terrorism and criminal activity, protecting Canada's borders, safeguarding the public during natural disasters and emergency situations, overseeing citizenship and immigration policies, and also this role is central to maintaining peace, order, and resilience within the Canadian society. So these responsibilities are handed over to Gary Anand Sangre. He was just appointed the Public Safety Minister.
That's a good thing.
Yeah.
So that will be something to watch for as well.
I, Heath MacDonald, do swear that I will be faithful and bear true allegiance to His Majesty King Charles III, King of Canada, his heirs and successors. I, Heath MacDonald, do solemnly and sincerely swear that I shall be a true and faithful servant to His Majesty King Charles III, as a member of His Majesty's
Minister of Agriculture, Heath MacDonald, right?
I will in all things be treated, debated, and resolved in Privy Council faithfully, honestly, and truly declare my mind and my opinion. I shall keep secret all matters committed.
Do we have more ministers to go? Are we done from
or that
this?
shall be secretly treated.
According to the list,
generally in all things, I shall do as faithful and true servant ought to do for His Majesty.
Didn't keep count there.
I think it's not going according to the list, actually.
It's not.
Yeah.
And faithfully, and to the best of my skill and knowledge, execute the powers and trusts reposed in me as Minister of Agriculture and Agri-Food.
So there are more secretaries state as well, yeah.
Yes.
Heath MacDonald has been a member of Parliament for Malpeque in Prince Edward Island since 2021. He previously served in the provincial government there in some roles, I should say, as Minister of Finance as well as the Minister for Tourism. That's where his kind of career history lies. He becomes the Minister of Agriculture, Rural Health for a number of years by another long time and very well-known PEI MP Lawrence McCulley, who decided to leave politics Just over the last year vacating his role, ultimately, Keith McDonald becomes the Minister of Agriculture.
Minister of Veterans Affairs and Associate Minister of National Defense.
I, Jill McKnight, do declare that I will
The
faithfully be
updated
faithful
on the
and
site
bear
as well.
true allegiance to His Majesty King Charles III, King of Canada,
Oh, the
his
official
heirs and successors.
Prime Minister of Canada's website is also
I, Jill
updated.
McKnight, do solemnly and sincerely declare that I shall be a true and faithful servant to His Majesty King Charles III as a member of His Majesty's Privy Council for Canada. I will in all things to be treated, debated, and resolved in Privy Council faithfully, honestly, and truly declare
Jill
my mind
McKnight.
and my opinion. I shall keep secret all matters committed and revealed to me in this capacity,
Yeah,
or that
whichever
shall be
is
secretly
Affairs
treated
and
of
Associate
in
Minister.
council. Generally, in all things, I shall do as a faithful and true servant ought to do for His Majesty. I, Jill McKnight, do solemnly and sincerely promise and declare that I will truly and faithfully, and to the best of my skill and knowledge, execute the powers and trusts reposed in me as the Minister of Veteran Affairs and the Associate Minister of National Defense. Thank you.
Jill McKnight there becomes the Minister of Veterans Affairs and Associate Minister of National Defense. Of course, those portfolios work hand in hand with each other. She is a brand new member of Parliament and new to Cabinet as well. She represents the riding of Delta in British Columbia, which was held for years, since 2015, I believe, by Carla Qualtrough, who also served in a number of different cabinet roles under former Prime Minister Justin.
Moi, Marjorie Michel,
I, Marjorie Michel,
fidélité et sincère
do
allégeance
swear that I will be faithful and bear true allegiance to His Majesty King Charles III, King of Canada, his heirs and successors.
I, Marjorie Michel, do swear that I will be faithful and bear true allegiance to His Majesty King Charles III, King of Canada, his heirs and successors. Moi, Marjorie Michel,
I, Marjorie Michel, do solemnly and sincerely swear that I shall be a true and faithful servant to His Majesty King Charles III, as a member of His Majesty's Privy Council for Canada. I will, in all things to be treated, debated, and resolved in Privy Council, faithfully, honestly, and truly declare my mind and my opinion. I shall keep secret all matters committed and revealed to me in this capacity, or that shall be secretly treated of in council. Generally, in all things, I shall do as a faithful and true servant ought to do for His Majesty.
I, Marjorie Michel, do solemnly and sincerely swear that I shall be a true and faithful servant to His Majesty King Charles III as a member of His Majesty's Privy Council for Canada. I will in all things to be treated, debated, and resolved in Privy Council, faithfully, honestly, and truly declare my mind and my opinion. I shall keep secret all matters committed and revealed to me in this capacity, or that shall be secretly treated of in council. Generally, in all things I shall do as a faithful and true servant oath to do for His Majesty. Moi, Marjorie Michel,
I, Marjorie Michel,
promets et jure
do solemnly and sincerely promise and swear that I will truly and faithfully, and to the best of my skill and knowledge, execute the powers and trusts that have been reposed in me as Minister of Health.
I, Marjorie Michel, do solemnly and sincerely promise and swear that I will truly and faithfully and to the best of my skills and knowledge, execute the powers and trust reposed in me as Minister of Health.
Marjorie Michelle becomes the Minister of Health, taking over.
At this time, we'll also have to thank CTV because we are getting all these updates from the CTV channel. Thank you so much for that.
Giving credits to CTV channel for going live.
Kind of on the staff side, when it comes to the previous government, most notably as Deputy Chief of Staff in the Prime Minister's office from 2021. She was the first Black person to hold that position. She's of Haitian descent. She also was the Liberal Party's director for the campaign, I believe, in both 2019 and 2021 in the province of Quebec. She becomes the Minister of Health.
And Minister responsible for the Prairies Economic Development Canada. Now I have Eleanor Angela Olszewski.
The Honorable Eleanor Angela Olszewski, Minister of Emergency Management and Community Resilience, and Minister responsible for Prairies Economic Development Canada.
I, Eleanor Angela Olszewski, do swear that I will be faithful and bear true allegiance to His Majesty King Charles III, King of Canada, his heirs and successors.
The Minister of Emergency Management.
I, Eleanor Angela Olszewski, do solemnly and sincerely swear that I shall be a true and faithful servant to His Majesty King Charles III as a member of His Majesty's Privy Council for Canada. I will, in all things to be treated, debated, and resolved in Privy Council, faithfully, honestly, and truly declare my mind and my opinion. I shall keep secret all matters committed and revealed to me in this capacity, or that shall be treated of in council. Generally, in all things, I shall do this as a faithful and true servant ought to do for His Majesty. I, Eleanor Angela Olszewski, do solemnly and sincerely promise and swear that I will truly and faithfully, and to the best of my skill and knowledge, execute the powers and trusts reposed in me as Minister of Emergency Management and Community Resilience and Minister responsible for Prairies Economic Development Canada.
Another new face around the cabinet table, Eleanor Olszewski represents the riding of Edmonton Centre, one of the few ridings in Alberta that the Liberals were able to win. She takes over from Randy Boissonnault, who was a cabinet minister for a number of years under the Trudeau government and decided not to run for re-election after a myriad of things, but a controversy nonetheless in some aspects. Eleanor Olszewski becomes the minister for a new portfolio, emergency management and community resilience. You would think that that has something to do with all the fires, for example, in Fort McMurray and adaptation to disasters that we are experiencing due to the increased impact of climate change. We'll look for some more clarity on what exactly her portfolio will oversee, but she becomes, as the MP for Edmonton Centre, the Minister of Emergency Management and Community Resilience.
Robertson, Minister of Housing and Infrastructure, and Minister responsible for Pacific Economic Development Canada. Now I have Gregor Robertson.
The Honorable Gregor Robertson, Minister of Housing and Infrastructure, and Minister responsible for Pacific Economic Development Canada.
I, Gregor Robertson, do declare that I will be faithful and bear true allegiance to His Majesty King Charles III, King of Canada, his heirs and successors. I, Gregor Robertson, do solemnly and sincerely declare that I shall be a true and faithful servant to His Majesty King Charles III as a member of His Majesty's Privy Council for Canada.
I will in all things to be treated, debated, and resolved in Privy Council faithfully, honestly, and truly declare my mind and my opinion. I shall keep secret all matters committed and revealed to me in this capacity, or that shall be secretly treated of in council. Generally, in all things I shall do as a faithful and true servant ought to do for His Majesty. I, Gregor Robertson, do solemnly and sincerely promise and declare that I will truly and faithfully, and to the best of my skill and knowledge, execute the powers and trusts reposed in me as Minister of Housing and Infrastructure and Minister responsible for the Pacific Economic Development Canada.
So Greta Robertson, a new member of Parliament for Vancouver, served, of course, as people in Vancouver will be familiar with the mayor of that city from 2008
The Robertson Minister of Housing and Infrastructure.
Yes.
He's
Prior to that, he will oversee
appointed.
the housing portfolio, taking it over from Sean Fraser.
That is also a very important ministry at the moment.
Yeah, the housing.
Yeah, because of the housing crisis and all of it.
Agency to do so, coming from Liberals during this campaign, he will be tasked with overseeing that.
Regarding this, we also had so many, details from the real estate from our show, right?
Yes, of course. So behind me is doing a real estate reality program every week, airing on Friday at 12:30. So we are talking to real estate professionals and mortgage brokers in order to talk about the trends which are going in the real estate market.
So stay tuned and subscribe the channel.
Yes, of course.
I shall be a true and faithful servant to His Majesty King Charles III as a member of His Majesty's Privy Council for Canada. I will, in all things, to be treated, debated, and resolved in Privy Council, faithfully, honestly, and truly declare my mind and my opinion. I shall keep secret all matters committed and revealed to me in this capacity, or that shall be secretly treated of in Council. Generally, in all things, I shall do as a faithful and true servant ought to do for His Majesty. I, Maninder Sidhu, do solemnly and sincerely promise and declare that I will truly and faithfully, and to the best of my skill and knowledge, execute the powers and trusts reposed in me as Minister of International Trade.
இதில் முக்கியமான விடயம் என்னென்னா, இப்போ நீங்கள் தொடர்ந்து பார்த்துட்டு இருக்கிற நேரத்தில் சில அமைச்சர்கள் சத்தியப்பிரமாணம் செய்யும் நிகழ்வுகள் ஏன் அதிக நேரம் எடுக்கிறது என்று உங்களுக்கு தோன்றலாம். உண்மைதான். ஆனால் இன்று புதிய பொறுப்புகளை ஏற்கும் அல்லது அமைச்சு பதவிகளை முன்னதாகவே அதாவது பிரிவு கவுன்சிலராக இருந்த அமைச்சர்கள் அவர்களின் அந்த பிரிவு கவுன்சிலர் கிளார்க் முன்னிலையில் புதிய பதவிக்கான சத்தியத்தை மட்டும்தான் எடுத்துக்கொள்கிறார்கள். இதை நீங்கள் உற்று நோக்கலாம். ஆனால் முழுமையாக புதிய அமைச்சர்கள் 3 முக்கியமான சத்தியங்களை எடுக்க வேண்டியிருக்கிறது. நம்பிக்கை சத்தியம், அதாவது ஓத் ஆஃப் அலிஜியன்ஸ் என்று சொல்வார்கள். அதனை நாட்டிற்கு ஒழுங்கு மாறாத விசுவாசத்தை உறுதி செய்யும் சத்தியமாக இருக்கிறது. அதே வேளையில் பிரிவு கவுன்சில் உறுப்பினருக்கான சத்தியம் ரகசியங்களை பாதுகாப்பது உள்ளிட்ட கடமைகளை உறுதியாக ஏற்கும் சத்தியமாக இது பார்க்கப்படுகிறது. அதே நேரத்தில் அமைச்சு பதவிக்கான சத்தியம் ஓத் ஆஃப் ஆஃபீஸ் என்று சொல்வார்கள். தாங்கள் ஏற்கும் புதிய பதவிக்கு உரிய கடமைகளை உண்மையுடன் நிறைவேற்றுவதை உறுதி செய்யும் சத்தியமாக இருக்கிறது. இதனால் தான் சிலருடைய சத்திய நிகழ்வுகள் மற்றவர்களை விட அதிக நேரம் எடுக்கின்றது என்பதை உங்களுக்காக நாங்கள் சொல்லிக் கொள்கின்றோம். The thing which it takes time. So what's the reason? So that's what I was saying about, talking about.
Take time for some people taking the oath?
Yes, there is a reason for that.
As a member of His Majesty's Privy Council for Canada, I will, in all things, to be treated, debated, and resolved in Privy Council, faithfully, honestly, and truly declare my mind and my opinion. I shall keep secret all matters committed and revealed to me in this capacity, or that shall be secretly treated of in council. Generally,
yeah, well, translating what Nirosh was saying is why some oaths are taking longer. Well, ministers who are already privy councillors and who are changing portfolios or accepting new portfolios today swore a new oath of office in front of the clerk of the Privy Council. So brand new ministers have to take multiple oaths. And they will swear or declare the oath of allegiance, the oath of members of the Privy Council, and then the oath of office. So that's what Nirosh was also explaining, that why some particular oaths are taking longer than the rest.
So Evan Solomon becomes a minister of a brand new portfolio. He is, of course, a former journalist right here at CTV as well as on CBC. His portfolio will focus on artificial intelligence and digital innovation, certainly something that the Prime Minister talked about during the campaign, in particular using AI, for example, to make the operations of government more efficient. We have not seen this portfolio before, so I can't tell you exactly what the minister's mandate will be, but it is interesting that it has been taken away, for example, from industry. Usually industry oversaw digitization or AI. François-Philippe Champagne, certainly in his capacity as Minister of Industry, oversaw those files. They've now been broken apart. Evan Solomon will serve as Minister of AI and Digital Innovation.
Secretaries of State will come forward as they are named.
The Honorable Ruby Sahota, Secretary of State, Combating Crime. L'Honorable Ruby Sahota, Secrétaire d'État, Lutte contre la criminalité.
I, Ruby Sahota, do solemnly and sincerely promise and declare that I will truly and faithfully, and to the best of my skill and knowledge, execute the powers and trusts reposed in me as Secretary of State, Combating Crime. Moi, Ruby Sahota, j'ai prometté de declare solemnellement,
do solemnly and sincerely promise and declare that I will truly and faithfully, and to the best of my skill and knowledge, execute the powers and trusts reposed in me
et je m'acquitter des responsabilités qui m'ont été confiées et qualité de secrétaire
as Secretary of State,
contre de criminalité.
Combating Crime.
Named there the first Secretary of State. So this is a different kind of composition of cabinet. There will be 10 Secretaries of State focused on specific priorities who will then kind of report to cabinet or be involved in cabinet when that priority is part of the agenda. So Ruby Sahota will serve as Secretary of State Combating Crime. She's been an MP representing a riding again in Brampton where there are a lot of concerns in the Greater Toronto Area about increasing crime, in particular as it relates, for example, to auto thefts. The Conservatives did see their share of the vote in a number of those Greater Toronto areas rise. And a lot of people inside the Liberal Party think that that is because of the issue of crime, which the Conservatives focus very much on in the lead up to the election and during the election. And so she will be focused on, as a Secretary of State, combating crime. That's Ruby Sahota.
Tanse Bakli Belanjin Sikasum, Mie Asses Uit Musik Este, Uit Aksakta Oste. I, Buckley Belanger, do swear that I will be faithful and bear true allegiance to His Majesty King Charles III, King of Canada, his heirs and successors. I, Buckley Belanger, do solemnly and sincerely swear that I shall be a true and faithful servant to His Majesty King Charles III as a member of His Majesty's Privy Council for Canada. I will bring in all things to be treated, debated, and resolved in Privy Council faithfully, honestly, and truly declare my mind and my opinion. I shall keep secret all matters committed and revealed to me in this capacity, or that shall be secretly treated of in council. Generally, in all things I shall do as a faithful and true servant ought to do for His Majesty. I, Buckley Belanger, do solemnly and sincerely promise and swear that I will truly and faithfully, to the best of my skill and knowledge, execute the power and trust reposed into me as Secretary of State Rural Development.
Buckley Bélanger, the lone Liberal MP in Saskatchewan, won his riding by a significant margin. He served as formerly a member of the provincial legislature, first elected as a Liberal, but then for decades as a New Democrat. I believe all the way from 1995 to 2021. He now becomes one of the 10 secretaries of state. He will be focused on the issue of rural development.
Stephen Bradley Fuhrer, Secretary of State, Defense Procurement. Stephen Bradley Fuhrer,
Stephen Bradley Fuhrer, Secretary of State, Defense Procurement.
I, Stephen Bradley Fuhrer, do swear I will be faithful and bear true allegiance to His Majesty King Charles III, King of Canada, his heirs and successors. I, Stephen Bradley Fuhrer, do solemnly and sincerely swear that I shall be true and faithful servant to His Majesty King Charles III as a member of his Privy Council for Canada. I will in all things to be treated, debated, and resolved in Privy Council faithfully, honestly, and truly declare my mind and my opinion. I shall keep secret all matters committed and revealed to me in this capacity, where that shall be secretly treated of the council. Generally, in all things I shall do as a faithful and true servant ought to do for His Majesty. I, Stephen Bradley Fuhrer, do solemnly and sincerely promise and swear I will truly and faithfully, and to the best of my skill and knowledge, execute the powers and trusts proposed to me as Secretary of State, Defense Procurement. Thank you.
So Stephen Fuhrer becomes a Minister of State focused on procurement. He spent 20 years in the military. He has an interesting political history, having moved from someone who identified as a supporter of the Conservative Party over to the Liberals. He represents Kelowna. It was his riding, then moved to Conservatives.
Me and Nirosh will be taking
now
off now. So the secretaries are being appointed at the moment, and we will continue to show you the live broadcast from CTV News. Thank you for watching behind me, and thank you, Nirosh, for joining me for the discussion.
Thank you, Sonali. Thank you.
Yeah, we wish Canada and the citizens and everybody here in Canada a very good luck with the new ministry.
Again.
Yes, of course.
அமைச்சரவைகள் பதவி பிரமாணம் எடுத்துக்கொண்டிருக்கிறார்கள். நீங்கள் தொடர்ந்தும் பார்த்து கொண்டிருக்கிறீங்க. உங்களுக்காக நாங்கள் சிடிவி மூலமாக நாங்களும் பதிவை உங்களுக்காக தந்து கொண்டிருக்கிறோம். தொடர்ந்தும் பார்த்துட்டுருங்க. உங்களுக்கான பதிவுகள் அனைத்தையும் நாங்கள் தந்து கொண்டிருக்கிறோம். அதே மாதிரி நீங்கள் பிஹைண்ட் மீன் ஃபேஸ்புக்கில் நீங்கள் போய் பார்த்தீர்களானால் அமைச்சரவை பதவிகள் யார் யார் என்ன பதவிகள் அவர்களுக்கு கிடைக்க பெற்றிருக்கிற விடயங்களையும் நாங்கள் பதிவிட்டிருக்கிறோம். அதையும் நீங்கள் போய் பார்க்கலாம். தொடர்ந்தும் பிஹைண்ட் மீயோடு இணைந்திருங்கள். உங்களுக்கான உடனடி செய்திகளை தர நாங்கள் காத்திருக்கிறோம்.
I shall be a true and faithful servant to His Majesty King Charles III as a member of His Majesty's Privy Council for Canada. I will, in all things, to be treated, debated, and resolved in Privy Council, faithfully, honestly, and truly declare my mind and my opinion. I shall keep secret all matters committed and revealed to me in this capacity, or that shall be secretly treated of in Council. Generally, in all things, I shall do as a faithful and true servant ought to do for His Majesty. Moi, Anna Gainey,
I, Anna Gainey, do solemnly and sincerely declare that I shall be a true and faithful servant to His Majesty King Charles III as a member of His Majesty's Privy Council for Canada. I will in all things to be treated, debated, and resolved in Privy Council faithfully, honestly, and truly declare my mind and my opinion. I shall keep secret all matters committed and revealed to me in this capacity, or that shall be secretly treated of in Council. Generally, in all things I shall do as a faithful and true servant ought to do for His Majesty.
I, Anna Ganey, do solemnly and sincerely promise and declare that I will truly and faithfully, and to the best of my skill and knowledge, execute the powers and trusts reposed in me as Secretary of State for Children and Youth. Moi, Anna Ganey,
I, Anna Ganey, do solemnly and sincerely promise and declare that I will truly and faithfully, and to the best of my skill and knowledge, execute the powers and trusts reposed in me as Secretary of State for Children and Youth.
Anna Ganey is an MP since a by-election in 2023 for the Montreal area riding of Westmount. She took over from former astronaut and Foreign Affairs Minister Mark Carney. Back then, she won re-election by a wide margin. She also was the president of the Liberal Party during the early years, the first years of Justin Trudeau being the leader of the party. So basically from 2014 to 2018. If her last name sounds familiar, it's because she's the daughter of former Montreal Canadiens player and general manager Bob Ganey. She is also married to Tom Pitfield, who had a big role in a number of Liberal campaigns, including this last one under leader Mark Carney.
Wayne Long, Secretary of State, Canada Revenue Agency and Financial Institutions. Wayne Long, Secretariat d'État.
Wayne Long, Secretary of State, Canada Revenue Agency and Financial Institutions.
I, Wayne Long, do swear that I will be faithful and bear true allegiance to His Majesty King Charles III, King of Canada, his heirs and successors. I, Wayne Long, do solemnly and sincerely swear that I shall be a true and faithful servant to His Majesty King Charles III as a member of His Majesty's Privy Council for Canada. I will in all things to be treated, debated, and resolved in Privy Council faithfully, honestly, and truly declare my mind and my opinion. I shall keep secret all matters committed and revealed to me in this capacity, or that shall be secretly treated of in council. Generally, in all things, I shall do as a faithful and true servant ought to do for His Majesty. I, Wayne Long, do solemnly and sincerely promise and swear that I will truly and faithfully, and to the best of my skill and knowledge, execute the powers and trusts reposed in me as Secretary of State, Canada Revenue Agency, and financial institutions. Thank you very much.
Wayne Long has been the MP for the New Brunswick riding of St. John's Rothesay since 2015. If you're counting, he's the third member of this cabinet now who wasn't going to run under the previous Prime Minister, but changed his mind once Mark Carney became leader of the Liberal Party. He was arguably one of the most publicly outspoken critics of Justin Trudeau's leadership in the final months of it, a number of months of it. At one point, he called Prime Minister Trudeau delusional. He opposed the imposition of the carbon tax in Atlantic Canada and a host of other government-led things, including small business tax changes years ago. He will now, though, serve as a member of Cabinet, a Secretary of State focused on the Canada Revenue Agency and financial institutions. A reminder, these roles are all new, so I don't even know what their specific mandates are, but that's what the title says.
I, Stephanie McLean, do declare that I will be faithful and bear true allegiance to His Majesty, King Charles III, King of Canada, his heirs and successors. I, Stephanie McLean, do solemnly and sincerely declare that I shall be a true and faithful servant to His Majesty, King Charles III, as a member of His Majesty's Privy Council for Canada. I will, in all things, to be treated, debated, and resolved in Privy Council, faithfully, honestly, and truly declare my mind and my opinion. I shall keep secret all matters committed and revealed to me in this capacity, or that shall be secretly treated of in council. Generally, in all things, I shall do as a faithful and true servant ought to do for His Majesty.
I, Stephanie McLean, do solemnly and sincerely promise and declare that I will truly and faithfully and to the best of my skill and knowledge execute the powers and trusts reposed in me as Secretary of State Seniors.
Stephanie McLean represents a riding in Victoria. She is brand new member of Parliament as well as to Cabinet. The Ministry of Seniors becomes something that will instead be at the Secretary of State level. She'll focus on that. She has sort of an interesting political history, having served in the Alberta legislature for a number of years, but as a New Democrat. So with the NDP, she was an MLA with them. She moved back to BC after leaving that position and has run a successful campaign unseating the New Democrats in that riding. That's a riding that was held by Randall Garrison, a well-known NDP MP, for a long time. She will become the Secretary of State focused on seniors.
Moi, Nathalie Provost, je jure
Nathalie
fidélité et
Provost,
sincère allégeance à Sa Majesté le
do
Roi
declare
Charles
that I will be faithful
Roi
and
du
bear true
Canada,
allegiance
à
to
ses
His Majesty
héritiers
King
et
Charles
successeurs.
III, King of Canada, his heirs and successors.
Moi, Nathalie Provost, je
I,
jure
Nathalie
solennellement
Provost,
et
do
sincèrement
solemnly
que
and
j'agirai
sincerely
en
swear
fidèle et
that I
loyal
shall be a true and
serviteur de Sa
faithful servant to
Majesté
His
le Roi
Majesty
Charles III,
King Charles
en ma
III,
qualité de membre
as a
du
member
Conseil
of His
privé de Sa
Majesty's
Majesté pour le
Privy
Canada.
Council for Canada.
J'exprimerai fidèlement, honnêtement et
I
en
will in
toute
all things to
vérité
be treated,
mon sentiment et mon
debated,
opinion
and
sur
resolved
toute
in
chose
Privy
traitée,
Council,
débattue et
faithfully,
résolue en
honestly, and
Conseil.
truly declare my
Je
mind
tiendrai
and my
secret
opinion.
tout ce qui
I
me
shall
sera
keep secret all
confié ou
matters
révélé en
committed
cette
and
qualité,
revealed to me in this
ou tout ce dont
capacity,
il sera
or that
traité
shall be
secrètement en
secretly
Conseil.
treated of in council.
J'agirai en toutes circonstances
Generally, in all
comme il
things, I
convient à
shall
un
do as a
fidèle et
faithful
loyal
and true servant
serviteur
ought
de
to
Sa
do
Majesté.
for His Majesty.
Moi, Nathalie Provost,
I,
je
Nathalie
promets et
Provost,
jure
do
solennellement et
solemnly and
sincèrement,
sincerely
au
swear
mieux de ma
and promise
compétence et
that
de
I
ma
will truly and
connaissance,
faithfully,
j'exécuterai
and to the best
loyalement
of
et
my
fidèlement
skill
les
and
pouvoirs
knowledge,
et je m'acquitterai des
execute the
responsabilités
powers
qui m'ont
and
été
trusts
confiées en
reposed in
qualité de
me
secrétaire
as
d'État
Secretary
naturelle.
of State Nature.
Natalie Provost is a brand new member of Parliament, but known to large swaths of the Canadian public. She is a survivor of the 1989 École Polytechnique massacre. Out of that, she founded the Poly se souvient group, which is basically an advocacy group for gun control. She was very involved in the legislation put forth by the previous government. She consulted quite significantly with them on that legislation. There are certainly critics of that legislation and critics of the lack of speed with which it's being implemented, but she was a big part of that. She becomes a Minister of State focused on nature. One of the Liberals' campaign promises was a sort of nature pass or sort of like a summer pass. Where a lot of the federally regulated parks would be free, for example, for Canadians. So I imagine she will be tasked with focusing on that.
Secretary of State, International Development.
I, Randeep Singh Sarai, do declare that I will be faithful and bear true allegiance to His Majesty King Charles III, King of Canada, his heirs and successors. I, Randeep Singh Sarai, do solemnly and sincerely declare that I shall be a true and faithful servant to His Majesty King Charles III. As a member of His Majesty's Privy Council for Canada, I will in all things to be treated, debated, and resolved in Privy Council faithfully, honestly, and truly declare my mind and my opinion. I shall keep secret all matters committed and revealed to me in this capacity, or that shall be secretly treated of in council. Generally in all things I shall do as a faithful and true servant ought to do for His Majesty.
I, Randeep Singh Sarai, do solemnly and sincerely promise and declare that I will truly and faithfully, and to the best of my skill and knowledge, execute the powers and trusts reposed in me as Secretary of State, International Development.
Randeep Sarai has been a member of parliament representing Surrey since 2015. This is his first entrance into cabinet. He will oversee as a Secretary of State the international development file, which is a switch that was previously a full ministry under, most notably, I would say, Ahmed Hussein, who is Minister of International Development. So was Harjit Sajjan. It is an interesting move to sort of relegate this or move it, I guess, to the Secretary of State capacity. We're not really sure exactly what that means for the size of the ministry, but you have to assume it would be smaller than when it was at full tilt. The Liberals did promise, though, not to cut international aid in the campaign.
I, Adam Van Couverden, do declare that I will be faithful and bear true allegiance to His Majesty King Charles III, King of Canada, his heirs and successors. Moi, Adam Van Couverden, je déclare
I, Adam Van Couverden, do declare that I will be faithful and bear true allegiance to His Majesty King Charles III, King of Canada, his heirs and successors.
I, Adam Van Couverden, do solemnly and sincerely declare that I shall be a true and faithful servant to His Majesty King Charles III, as a member of His Majesty's Privy Council for Canada. I will in all things to be treated, debated, and resolved in Privy Council, faithfully, honestly, and truly declare my mind and opinion. I shall keep secret all matters committed and revealed to me in this capacity, or that shall be secretly treated of in Council. Generally, in all things I shall do as a faithful and true servant ought to do for His Majesty. Moi, Adam Van Couverden, je déclare
I, Adam Van
solemnement et
Couverden,
sincèrement
do
que
solemnly and
j'agirai
sincerely declare that I shall be a true and faithful servant to His Majesty King Charles III as a member of His Majesty's Privy Council for Canada. I will in all things to be treated, debated, and resolved in Privy Council, faithfully, honestly, and truly declare my mind and my opinion. I shall keep secret all matters committed and revealed to me in this capacity, or that shall be secretly treated of in Council. Generally, in all things I shall do as a faithful and true servant ought to do for His Majesty.
I, Adam Van Couverden, do solemnly and sincerely promise and declare that I will truly and faithfully, and to the best of my skill and knowledge, execute the powers and trusts reposed in me as Secretary of State, Sport. Moi, Adam Van Couverden,
I, Adam Van Couverden, do solemnly and sincerely promise and declare that I will truly and faithfully, and to the best of my skill and knowledge, execute the powers and trust reposed in me as Secretary of State, Sport.
Thank you.
Adam Van Couverden makes his way into cabinet. He's been an MP for the Greater Toronto Area riding of Milton, not really GTA, I guess I should say a little bit further west of there. But he has been the MP since 2019. He is recognizable to many Canadians as a former Olympic gold medalist. He's a kayaker, so it would seem to make sense that he will focus in his capacity as a Secretary of State on the issue of sport, though I don't know what specifically the mandate for that is, but will be his role.
John Zurcelli, Secretary of State, Labor. John Zurcelli, Secrétaire d'État Travail.
John Zurcelli, Secretary of State for Labor.
I,
John Zaricelli, do swear that I will be faithful and bear true allegiance to His Majesty King Charles III, King of Canada, his heirs and successors. I, John Zaricelli, do solemnly and sincerely swear that I shall be a true and faithful servant to His Majesty King Charles III as a member of His Majesty's Privy Council for Canada. I will in all things to be treated, debated, and resolved in Privy Council, faithfully, honestly, and truly declare my mind and my opinion. I shall keep secret all matters committed and revealed to me in this capacity, or that shall be secretly treated of in council. Generally, in all things, I shall do as a faithful and true servant ought to for His Majesty. I, John Zaricelli, do solemnly and sincerely promise and swear that I will truly and faithfully and to the best of my skill and knowledge execute the powers and trusts reposed in me as Secretary of State, Labor. Thank you. Nice to see you.
John Zaricelli is the last of the new ministers of state, or secretaries of state, rather. He'll focus on labor. He's a brand new MP for the riding of Etobicoke North. People around Ottawa know him quite well. He used to be the director of operations and a host of other roles in the Prime Minister's office in the previous government before leaving a number of years ago to enter the private sector. He then left the private sector to run in this federal election successfully, again in the riding of Etobicoke North. He will focus on labor. I imagine working with Patty Hajdu, who is serving as the Minister for jobs and families. How those two roles are delineated remains to be seen, but he will be the Secretary of State for Labor.
The Governor General, the Prime Minister, and the Clerk of the Privy Council and Secretary to the Cabinet will now sign the oath books to formally witness the swearing in of the Ministers and Secretaries of State.
Some formalities there, bringing the ceremony, the swearing-in ceremony of this new cabinet to a conclusion. John Hannaford, the clerk of the Privy Council, so kind of the top bureaucrat, is the last to sign the oath. First was Governor General Mary Simon, then of course Prime Minister Mark Carney. The cabinet is now fully sworn in, so 29 members of cabinet, including the Prime Minister, full-fledged, and an additional 10 secretaries of state serving in a number of different capacities, 24 new faces in cabinet, and some familiar ones as well.
The Governor General will now confirm the Great Seal of Canada.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you all for being here today.
Please stand if you can, and let's join Mary Navawadin from the White Nation, who will sing the national anthem in English and Canada and Anna Beshnabek.
demeurer avec eux pour le départ de leurs accélérations. Du Premier ministre et des membres de France viennent.
Their Excellencies and the Prime Minister, Governor and Council will depart accompanied by the music of the Cher Blue Band. Thank you for your participation today.
Gentlemen, please, thank you all for being here. And please rise if you're able and join Mary Brighton, Mary Nagawangbo, a member of the Whitefish River First Nation, who will be singing in English, French, and Anishinaabe. Following the anthem, please remain at your places for the departure of Their Excellencies, the Prime Minister and members of the 30th Canadian Ministry, accompanied by the music provided by Métis fiddler Alicia Gore.
Oh, Canada, our home and native land, true patriot love in all of us command, car ton bras s'est porté l'épée, il s'est porté la croix. Ton histoire est une épopée des plus brillants exploits. Ô Canada, Kichigwanach, Nani Buida, Miigweche Wendanda. Nani Buida, Miigweche Wendanda.
And with the singing of the national anthem, the swearing-in ceremony comes to an end. You can hear certainly the song now or the entertainment now as ministers, beginning with the Prime Minister, make their way out of this room. They will be heading to a lunch with their family.